Ohio State at Oregon, Saturday, 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 local kickoff on NBC. It's basically the they haven't seen it bowl. Because no matter which way you go on this game, you can find a direction for Oregon or for Ohio State. Your crux of your argument probably consists of, well, they hadn't seen anything like fill in the blank. It could be any of a number of things. I mean, Oregon right now, they're not running the ball great. Explosives, they've given up a few. I mean, Ohio State just in totality, like what kind of quarterback have they faced? All this stuff, I've heard it all week. You'll hear it all week. So a lot of it's valid. Like somebody's flaws are going to get exposed. Maybe both teams' flaws will get exposed here. Since the start of last year, here's what I know. This is kind of a low-key paper popper of a stat. Oregon and Ohio State are number 1 and number 2 in point per game differential in the country. So they've been really good at beating teams and getting margin on them. And now here we are, Ohio State favored by 3.5 in odds. And that is not easy to do. Just from an odds-making standpoint, to be installed as over a field goal favorite in the building of a top 10 team, top 5 team, according to many. We'll see what the JP poll says later tonight. Not easy to do. So the matchup of this game, at least to me, is no mystery. It's Oregon's defensive line versus Ohio State's offensive line. Now, that can mean many different things to many different people. Here's what I'm thinking about. So I got Oregon here, 6th best pressure rate team in the country so far this year. Ohio State, number 1 in pressure rate allowed. Now, that's the kind of stat where I look at it and I think to myself, one of two things. It's a big fork in the road moment for Ohio State's offensive line because I don't think they're that good, but maybe they are. I certainly don't think that pressure rate, I mean, keeping my quarterback upright and clean, I don't think Ohio State's offensive line is that elite to be number 1 in the country. But you know what? The stats say otherwise right now. Numbers lie to us all the time in this sport. Anyone who tells you otherwise is a casual and a fool. But that's part one, because not only is Oregon's defensive front a lot more athletic, I think, overall and deeper overall than anything that Ohio State will have seen. They can be multiple, so they can do different things, give you different looks. And also, I have arguments all the time with some of the advanced stat folks who think that home field does or doesn't matter. Here's what I know. From a communication standpoint and from a psychological standpoint, when you go out into an environment like this, it matters. It matters case by case. Some teams handle it better than others, but it does matter. All right, so I am looking right now, and I'm thinking about Will Howard, the quarterback there for Ohio State. He's thrown an interception in his last 3 games. It may mean something, it may mean nothing. But I think about how in games like this, where I think it's very compacted and I think the margins are razor thin either way, I just think about the impact one mistake could have. And I think about the positions that Oregon could put him in that he hasn't been put in. I can think of, for example, situations where Ohio State needs to throw. Well, we haven't really seen that because Ohio State hasn't needed to do anything offensively all year. I just think about how this is either a coming out moment for him, not that he's an unknown commodity, but quarterbacking this team. You got a couple of environments here and then a couple of weeks in Happy Valley where you're going to have to put it all on the line. And I really think, I need you to close your ears in Ann Arbor for a second. These are the Michigan games for Ohio State this year. I don't take anything away from that rivalry. I got all the respect in the world for the rivalry. But the quality of competition, this right here at Oregon and a couple of weeks at Penn State, those are the moments, to me, more so than the Michigan game itself, that will ultimately test the mettle of this Ohio State team this year. So that's part one, and that's a lot of unknown, honestly, because of the lack of situations they've been put in to that degree so far this year. Ohio State has had, though, no reason to show anything offensively. So the plus side of playing a bakery in the first month of the season, just cupcake after cupcake rolled at you, is you don't have to show what you don't want to show. You think Chip Kelly looked at Akron and Western Michigan and said, can't wait to unload the belt on this one? Absolutely not. So it begs the question, with a new offensive coordinator in town, how much have I not seen and how much will I see in this game? I haven't, for example, when I watch Ohio State play this year, I haven't seen many Will Howard designed runs. He can do it. I just really haven't seen them use it. I haven't seen the depth of that wide receiver room. It's been used, but it hasn't been used, I don't think, to the degree that it can be. I haven't seen him incorporate the tight end position a whole lot in the passing game. Not maybe because they are not at that position what they were last year with Stover moving on, but it also could be that They know full well they can do it, and they can throw the ball to the running backs out of the backfield, and they can run the quarterback by design if they want to, and it's all stuff they plan on doing. And you just circle a game like this and get ready to unload it. In fact, I'd be surprised to a certain degree if that wasn't the case here. Oregon, this year, probably because of personnel, but maybe also just by schematic decision to change, is running a lot more zone than they were this time last year, or Lanning has at any point in his time at Oregon. They haven't faced any real legitimate passing threats, though. They've faced some teams that put some numbers on them, like Boise got into the mid-30s against them, and that's really it. But they haven't faced a quarterback, and they haven't faced an offense in totality, the likes of Ohio State. And so I think about that, and I mean, most people do that against Ohio State anyway. Very, very few secondaries are capable of manning up against Ohio State, so they're used to seeing that stuff. Will Howard is used to seeing that. But what does Ohio State needing to throw the ball look like? That to me is one of the keys of this game. It's not that Will Howard can't do it. It's that's the position you want him in. Because I think that Ohio State will be able to run the ball here. I think Ohio State should be able to count on running the ball here. When you got the two horses in the backfield, along with the quarterback who can do it, you should be able to take that on the road. I said at the beginning of the season that I thought in these big games, we can talk about Jeremiah Smith all we want to, Egbuka, we can talk about him all we want to, but the ultimate key for this team to make it to the finish line, to win a championship this year, was going to be that they had to do the kind of stuff that Michigan had done to them. And they were just more physical than them, and they could count on grinding out yards on the ground in winning time. Ohio State's the kind of team that should be able to do that. I say should be because we haven't seen them have to do it yet this year. I think I need to see if Oregon can do it, though. So we haven't mentioned Dylan Gabriel yet, have we? We haven't mentioned the quarterback there at Oregon yet. I think it's a big pressure spot for him. I think it's a big pressure spot because I remember even back when he transferred to Oregon, I was there last year in Dallas when he beat Texas. I mean, Dylan Gabriel, when he was at Oklahoma, had a really, really big day, and they had a couple of pluses and turnover margin, and they go and they beat Texas, and that was a big day for him. He ran the ball very well that day. However they have to do it here, this is a huge moment for him because when he transferred to Oregon, what I was going to say is a lot of folks in the scouting community circled this game, and they said, Gabriel's arm may cost them against the only elite secondary that they play all year, and folks were talking about Ohio State. So this was back in the spring, and so I just put it in the back of my mind. Those are guys that grade based on a Sunday rubric talking about this. I care about how good a college quarterback he is, but I'd also be kidding myself if I thought there were a whole lot of Caleb Downs on the roster, on the schedule for Dylan Gabriel. So I think that that's a key because as much as I talked about Will Howard throwing an interception the past 3 weeks, the windows are really tight in a game like this. The athletes move a little bit faster in that secondary opposing you in a game like this. He's been okay so far this year. Yeah, I also watched him against Michigan State last week, and there were some egregious decisions made in that game that were covered up because Oregon ran away with the game. Got to get it cleaned up. I think Oregon has disruption potential for Ohio State here. I think Ohio State has it for Oregon. Now, Oregon, to their credit, has gotten their offensive line to a position where they should be scaling at the right time here. They've gotten as healthy as they can get. They should be good to go. Colin, let's take a look at what the model thinks. I'll tell you what I think. So right now at FanDuel, we have Ohio State minus 3.5. The model disagrees. It thinks it's a tighter game than that. The model has this at just Ohio State minus 1.5. I think that it's interesting that both these teams have faced Michigan State already. So you can get pretty good feedback from Michigan State circles. And the folks in Michigan State circles, some of whom at least, think Oregon has a little advantage on the line of scrimmage here. Isn't that interesting? And you got home field obviously at your back. And what's the Wilner headline out there? Big Ten teams having to travel 2 or more time zones are just horrific so far this year. What I'm trying to tell you is I think Oregon's going to win the game outright. Very close nip and tuck. No strong feeling, no money that will be bet on this game from me. Both of these coaches, perceptionally, are placed in this position where the public demands that they win a big game. Dan Lanning, what has he won? Not from me, of course. Ryan Day, what has he won? Not from me, of course. I think most of that is foolish, but someone's got to win this thing. So someone gets a big win Saturday. It could be the first of 2 times they meet. For all we know, it could be the first of 3 times they meet. I believe that Oregon is charged and ready for this moment. I also think Jeremiah Smith could take over the game at any point. So, I think their ground game could take over the game at any point. So it's very, very tough for me to pick this one. But I did go Oregon very slightly. I will take the Ducks to win as a very, very small, not that small, 3.5 point home underdog. We'll see. By the way, if you're watching, and we got a lot of live viewers watching, just make sure you subscribe to the channel. We do this thing free all year. We appreciate it. We go to games like this every week. This week it's Oregon. Next week, well, who knows, because we haven't made the decision yet, but subscribing to the channel really helps us out, and it's free, and it doesn't do anything to you. It just helps us.